Hello everyone, we have to discuss about GS paper 3 mains answer writing preparation. देख लेते हैं क्वेश्चन नंबर 1. क्वेश्चन देख लेते हैं. इंडियन इकोनॉमिक एंड द इशू रिलेटिंग टू द प्लानिंग मोबिलाइजिंग ऑफ द रिसोर्सेज एंड ग्रोथ डेवलपमेंट एंड अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट and even though the objectives of the monetary policy are clear, achieving theme can be other complex and multifaceted and task, especially in other diverse and dynamics economic like the India. Examine the 250 words. Difficulty level moderate. Reference Indian inside on eyes by the questions. The question is part of other static syllabus of general study theory and the mention as other part of the mission 2014-2024 secures timetables revision. Key demand of the questions: to write about the role of the RBI, especially and as part of the monetary policy and impediment it face in the achieving it. Directive words. When asked to examine B must the investigations and the topic. Contact words in detail aspects it is investigated, it can and established the key fact and issues related to the topic in the questions. While doing so, we should explain and why thus the effect and the issues are important and their implication. Structure of the answer. Introduction. Begin by the defining the monetary policy body. First in brief and brief write in the brief question brief about various objectives of monetary policy, and next write about the impediment and it is the faces by the RBI in achieving monetary policy and objectives: prices stability and high inflation, particularly in food and fuel, and prices delicate balance and between the stimulating and growth and the control inflation except the sustainables and by the crime sitting and statistics. Conclude by the writing a way and forward to the overcomes the above mentioned limitations. Monetary policy refers to the policy of the central bank and IE and Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India in matter of the interest rate and the money supply and available of credit. अच्छी हो जाए फिर मुझसे बोलिए कि मैं Monetary policy refers to the policy of the central bank and the Reserve Bank of India in the matters of the interest rate and money supply and the availability of the credit. And short, monetary policy refers to the use of the monetary infrastructure under the control of the central bank and to the regulated magnitude and such as the interest rate and money supply and availability of credit, and with other view to achieving the ultimately object of the economic policy body. Monetary Policy Committee and performances beginning in the May 2022 and when it held and in the unscheduled and meetings the MPC and has raised interested and rated in every meetings to tackle the implementation. MPC and increase this rate and from the 4% in April 2022 to 4.4% in May 2022 to the 4.9% in June 2022 to 5.4% in the August 2022 and to 5.9% in September 2022. Now in the December, RBI raised the repo by the 35 basis point and but the since and January and this year's and inflations and has renamed and about the uppers and threshold of the RBI inflations and targeting the framework as the RBI is the mandated to keep the inflations at the 4 plus and the minus and 2%. Inflations and the targeting has been the successful to 2019 on the grounds and that the inflation rate inflation targeted has been and the successful till 2019 on the grounds and that the inflation rate and has remained within the band and agreed to the between the government and the RBI and the whether it has been achieved and by the assurings and the inflation's expectations. However, inflations and in India entered the prescriptions and band of the 2% and to the 6% 2 years before the inflation targeting was adopted in 2016-17. In fact, the inflations had fallen steady since 2011 and 12 and halving 2015 and 16. The MPC. The MPC has mostly continued with the accommodative and policy stance and bears the balance of the growth, inflations and dynamics has the tilted and more the towards growth and post-pandemics the accommodative and policy stance and was needed giving the rough and the right because of the pandemics and the is consistent and with the overreaching and objectives of the RBI to maintain price stability keeping in mind growth. And inflation had fallen and from the above 9% before the flexibles and inflation's targeting fit to other range of the 3.8 and 4.3% during the fit and the indicating and that the 4% is the appropriated and level of the inflation targeting. However, NPSN has given and since 2016 and the cases of IL and FS and the PMC and the bank NBC. Poor management and the malfeasances in the financial sector and could escape and the scrutiny and then the central bank hunkers and downs and to the inflation and targeting impediments and impediment faced by the RBI. The tiger and money policy undermining and growth and from the May 2022 and onwards the RBI started raising the interest rate because why then it was clear and that the inflation and could no longer be the ignored and that if not the content and it would and undermines an India economically recovery. It is not and the worthy that the RBI man's legal mandated is to the maintain price sustainability is must by law and keep inflation and 8.4% with other levy of the 2 percentage point either side in any the particular month. But then thus and the actions and by the RBI and more rates and hikes and are in the store and will the drains down economic growth and unemployment and poor men and inflations and the government and struggling to deal and with the massive and widespread and unemployment while in the percentage and terms and GDP growth and rate and looks rosy and the truth and is that in the real terms the economic is the barely out of the contractions and it the witnessed and during the COVID pandemic unemployment and has been a the concern since 2017 and when it hit a the fourth decades high and the dilemma. If RBI continue to the tightens and mandatory policy, it will weaken and economically recovery at either time and when growth is already and faltering in unemployment is already quite high. If RBI ignored and inflation, then it hit the poor and immediately and without the necessarily and the guaranteeing and that the growth and the unemployment will be the resolve. Conclusion: a looming economic recessions in many parts of the world and geopolitical tensions and policy hikes across would be control and the unprecedented and inflation and community price and the fluctuations and are bound to are bound to catch up at the some stages and impact India so far, and we have the navigated the external threat and through the small fiscals and the monetary policy mode. The price of the crude oil and the currency depreciations are two and added variables and that India has to navigate. What does the terms and national incomes and signify and why it is the significant, and discuss the different approaches and to the calculating national income to 50 word. Introduction. Monetary policy refers to the policy of the central bank and Reserve Bank of India in the matters of interest rate, money supply, and the availability of credits. And in the short, monetary policy refers to the issue or use of monetary instrument and under the control of the central bank to regulate the magnitudes and such as interest rate and money supply and the availability or credit, and with other view and to achieving the ultimate and object of the economic policy body. Monetary policy and committee performance beginnings in May 2022 when it hold and the unscheduled meeting the MPC and has the raised interest rate in the every meetings to tackle inflations. MPC increased and this rate and from the 4% in April 2022 to the 4.4% in May 2022 to 4.9% in the June 2022 to the 5.4% in August 2022 and to 5.9% in the September 2022. Now in the December, RBI raised the repo by the 35 basis point. क्या होगा? But since January this year, inflation has raised and above the क्वेश्चन नंबर सेकंड देख लेते हैं. व्हाट डज द टर्म नेशनल इनकम द सिग्निफिकेंट एंड व्हाई इट इज द सिग्निफिकेंट. डिस्कस द डिफरेंट अप्रोच टू द कैलकुलेटिंग नेशनल इनकम. 250 वर्ड्स. डिफिकल्टी लेवल एंड इजी रेफरेंस इनसाइड ऑन आई. व्हाई द क्वेश्चंस. By the question is a part of the static syllabus of the general study papers 3 and the mention as the part of the mission 2024 and secures the timetable revision. Key demand of the question and to write about the national's income and it is the importance and the method or to the computes it and directive buts and discuss and this and the all the encompasses and the directive you must debates and on the paper by going the through the detail of the issues and concern by the examine each of them and you must and give reason for both and both for and against the argument and structure of the answer and the introduction by the defining Indian nation and first body. The first write about the importance of the national income and as the microeconomic and parameters and it is the indicated and next write and about the various method of the computers and of the national income product method and income method and expenditure method and conclude and by the summarized introduction. National income is the total value of the all fines and goods and services and produced by the country in the certain years and the growth of the national income and help to the now the programs of the country and in others the words and the total amount of the income and accruing to the country and from the economic activities in other years time is known as the national income and it is includes the payment and made to all the reasons and in the forms of wages and interest rate and the profits. However, national income is not the sum of all the incomes and earned by all the citizens and but only those incomes which accrued and due to the participated in the productions process and body net national productions and aid the factors quote is known as the national income and NNP factor aid the rate factor cost income national income and NNP aid the rate market price tax plus subscribe and however the central statistics and offices CSO and under the Ministry of the Static and the program implementation defined and national income. However, the central and the national income of India and the net national and income is the marketplace major methods and of the national income and calculated production method. The method is also called as the outputs and method or the value added and method and the production methods and gives as the nationals. Production method. This production is also called the outputs and method or the value added and the productions method gives us the national income or the national production and just and based on the finance value of the productions and the origins of the production in terms of the industries or all the producing units are the classified sector wise and primarily sector is divided into the agriculture, fisheries, animals husbandry. Secondary sector and consists of the manufacturing territory sectors divided into the trade, transport and the communication, banking, insurance, etc. Then the net value added and by each the productive enterprises as well as by each the industries or the sector is estimated income method benefits factors and of the production are paid and for their the productives services and randoms to end the organization the various income that the include in thus the method are wages income of the self-employed and interested profit dividend rent and the surplus of the public sectors and few and net flow of the income from the abroad. The various sectors, the household and sectors are the government sector, the business sector, and either the spend there the income or the consumer goods and the services, or they have a part of their the income and thus can be categorized as the private consumers expenditure, private investment, public consumer public investment. Conclusion. In India, national income is the calculated by the combined method and it is combined and to the method and product or outputs and method and the income method and which is this is done and to the overcome the problems of the deficiency of the static and the production method. Production method this is done and to the overcome the problems of the deficiency of the strategic the production method individuals and to find out to net the contributed and to the national's income of all the producing units the incomes and method added up the income and the payment occurrence of the factors and of production. This production is used in the territory sector and like the government services, banking, etc. and also in the community sector and if outputs data is not required available. The money market is other fundamental component of the Indian financial system, providing the platform for the short-term financing and the implementations of the monetary policy. Discussed to 50 words. Difficulty level moderate and reference live meant and sign on India by the questions. The money market in India and has the witness and the unusual and the sign in the last few months and there has been the pressure on the liquidity and even the since Reserve Bank of India and RBI introduce an incremental and case reserve ratio ICRR. Key demand of the question and to write about importance of the money market and introductions. Structure of the answer. Introduction. Begin by the defining money market and body. Write about the importance of the money market for the Indian economic and development of the trade and industry, development of the capital income and smooth functioning of the commercial banks and formulation of the stations and monetary policy, etc. City statics and to the substantial conclusion and by the summarizing introduction. The money market refers to the trading in very short terms and depth the investment at the wholesale and label it involve large volumes and the trades and between the institution and traders and at the retail level it is the included money and market mutuals and funds and brought by the individuals investor and money market amount the opened by the bank customers. Body background. An individual may investment in the money market and by the purchasing a money market and mutual fund and buying other treasury bill or opening other money market account at other bank. And money market investment are the characterized by the safety and the liquidity with money market fund share targeted as one money market and the account offer the higher interest rate than other nums and saving account, and but there are higher account and minimums and the limits on withdraw. Important of the money market and to the Indian economic development of the trade and industries, and it is and the important source of the financial trainings and industries as it's the provided for the short terms fund adequately and the quickly. The money market through the discounting and operation and finance or commercial papers and finance the short term working capitals requirement of the trade and industries and financial and facilities the development of the industries and trade both national and international development of the capital market. The short terms rated of the international and the condition that the privileges in the money market influences the long terms interested as well as the resources mobilizations in capital market. Smooth functioning of the commercial banks. The money market provided the commercial bank and with the facilities for the temporary employings. There's the surplus in the funds in the easily reliable and asset the bank can get and back the funds and quickly in the time of the need and by the resorting to the money market. It is also enable the commercial bank to meet their the statutory requirement of cash reserve ratio R CRR and the statutory liquidity ratio SLR by the utilizing the money market and mechanism. Effective central bank control formulation of the suitable monetary policy and the non-inferior sources of the finance to the government is developed. A developed of the money a developed and money market help the effective functionings and of the central bank. It is the facilitated effective the implementation of the monetary policy of the central bank. Formulation of the situation monetary policy and condition privileging in a the money market serve other true indicators of the monetary state of and the economic and hand. It is the sub as other guides and to the government to the formulating and the reviving the monetary policy and depending upon the monetary condition and preventings in the market. Non-inflationaries and sources of the finance and to the government advance money market and help the government and to the raise short terms and fund through the treasury bill and floated in the market. In the absence of the development money market and the government would be forced to the print and issues and more money and or the borrow from the central bank, and both of the which would and lead to an the increase in the prices and the consequences and inflationaries and trade in the economic conclusion. There are several pros and cons. There are several pros and cons and of the money market and investment. Most money market and the securities are the considered and the extremely low risk and due to the protection of the FDIC and insurance banking and by the government or the bank or the in the credit both and as and of the borrowers, and they are the also very liquid and the meanings and that they can the readily by the exchanges for the case at the short notice, and the trade of having and low risk and is that, and thus the investment also have low the returns and not only do money and market and under performs and others the asset and classes, and they often the don't even keep and pays and with the inflations in the additions any fees and association within the account and can easily each into those and slims return. Addressing the issues of the black money and has been the persistent challenges with the significant economic, socials and the political implications criteria examine. Difficulty level moderate and Money market refers to the trading in vary the short terms and depth the investment at the wholesale levels it and the involve and large volumes and trades and between the institute and trade and at the retails level it is the includes money and market and mutual funds and brought by the individual and investor and money market and account the opened by the bank consumers body background and individuals and made the investment in the money market and by the purchasing a money market and mutual funds and buying the treasury bills and or the an individual may investment in the money market and by purchasing a money market mutual funds and buying other treasury bills and or the openings a money market account at other bank and money market investment are the characterized and by the safety and the liquidity with money market funds the share targeted one. Money market accountant offers the higher interest and rate than other normals and the saving accountant, but there are the higher account minimums and limits and on the bedroom important of the money market and to the Indian economic development of trade and industries. It is and the important sources of the financial trade and industries and it is the provided for the short terms and funds adequately and the quickly the money market and through the discountings and operation and the commercials papers and finance the short terms and working capitals requirement of trade and industries and facilitated the development of industries and trade both national and international the development of capital market the short term rate of the interested and the conditions that prevails in the money market and influences the long term interest as well as the resources mobilization in the capital market. Smooth functionings of the commercial bank, the money market provided the commercial bank can be facilitated with the temporary enjoying there the surplus and fund in the easy liabilities asset the bank can get back the funds and the quickly in the times of the need and by the sortings to the money market. It also enables the commercial banks to meet and their the statutory board requirement of the case and reserve ratio banking CRR and the statutory liquidity ratio SLR by the utilizing the money market and mechanism. Effective central bank and control are developed and money market and help the effective functions of other central bank. It is the facilities effective implementations of the monetary policy of the central bank formulations and of the stables and monetary policy and condition prevailing in other money market serve as other true indicators of the monetary state of and the economic hence it is the serve as other guide to government in formulating and the revealing the monetary policy and depending upon the monetary condition revealing in the market non-influence the sources of the finance to government a developed money market help the government to raise short-term funds and through the treasury bills and floated in the market in the absence of a development of a developed money market, the government would be forced to the print and issues and more the money or the borrow from the central bank and both of which would and lead to and the increase in the prices and the consequences influentially trends in the economic and conclusion. There are several pros and the cons of the money market and investment and most of the money market and the securities are the considered and the extremely and low risk and due to the protection of the FDIC and the insurance banking and by the government or bank or the high credit worthiness of the borrowers and they are also and very the liquids and meanings that they can readily be the exchanges for the case at the short notice and the trade of having low risk is that unless the investment and also have low returns and not only do money market is underperformance other assets classes and they often don't even keep and pace with the inflations in addition any fees associated with and the account can easily eat into the those and slims return Addressing the issue of the black money then has been other persistent challenges with the significant economic, social, and the political implication. Criteria examined 250 were difficult, label moderate, and reference the sign on India's and why the question. The question is other part of the strategic syllabus and of the जाके आवाज कम कर ले ठीक है ना syllabus of the General Studies Paper 3 and the mention as other part of the Mission 2024 secures timetable. Key demand of the questions to write about the management of the black money. It is the impact and the measures needed to end it and directive words. Critically examine when asked to the examine and we have to the look into the topic and contact word in the details and inspected. It is the investigated it and the established the key facted and issues related to the topic in the questions, and while doing so we the should explain and why. Thus facts and issues are the important and there the implications, and when the critically is the suffix or the prefix and to the directive, and one needs to the look at the goods and the bad of the topics and give other fair judgment. Structures of the answer and introductions, and begin by the giving and contact of the black money in India body. First write about the challenges and faced in the tacklings and the issues of the black money, and the next write about the various measures and undertaken to tackle black money in India's and black money and disclosed and foreign incomes and asset and the impositions of the tax act and 2015 and double taxation avoidance agreement and DTAS and etc. Also write about the limitations in the ending black money's money menace. Next write about the impact of the black money on the various facets, and next write about the measures and that are the needed to end and black money and menace in the country. Conclusion with other way forward and introduction. Black money include all the funds and earned through the illegals and activity and otherwise the legal income that is the not recorded and for the tax pursuits, and black money and proceeds are usually receiving in the case from the undergrounds and economic activities, and as such are not the taxes and recipient of black money and must hide and it is the spent and it only in the underground and economic or the attempts to give it is the appearances of the legitimacy and through the money and laundering body. Impact of the black money. Impact of the black money and the laws of revenue and black money and etc. Black money eats up the part of the tax and thus the government and deficient increases the government has to the balance and the deficit by the increasing tax and the decreasing subsidy and the increasing and borrowing lead to other further incomes in the government and debt due to the interest and burden. If the government is the unable to the balances the deficits, it has to the decrease and depend spendings and which the affected government. Development money calculation. Pupils generally tend to the keep and black money and in the forms of the gold and innovations and properties and other secret manners, and such the money does not. Such the money does not become part of the main economic and therefore the remains and generally out of the calculations and the black money and keeps circulating and among the wealthy and the create more opportunities for them and higher inflations. The infusions of the unaccounted and black money in the economy can lead to the higher inflation, and which is the obviously and hits the poor and the most. It is also the increase the disparities and between the rich and the poor the others due to parallels and economic, and neither government nor the industries and get the actual pictures of investment sentiments, and this the created market and distortions and black money and means loss of the tax and revenue and to the government, and this reduce government and capacities to the spend more on the social infrastructures. Corruption in government and project and the procurement created inequalities and the infrastructures, and as the RBI and government have no the control over the black money, and this the makes and difficult for the RBI and to the efficiency and target inflations, and government also face the problems and while deciding and fiscal policy, and black money is further driving some of the prices of the real estate and black money and generated from the drugs and the smugglings is being used to the operates and terrorist network. This threatens the national security and black money and furthers the income and the inequalities and the poverty, and there is the distortions in investment in economy with black money, and the investment is made in made in high end the luxury goods and forwards tradings and of the goods and by the cash rich and the speculators and causes and the fluctuations in the prices and due to the hoardings and black money and lead to the further corruptions and by the creating other vicious circles and generating black money and means that the quality is the compiled and in the public sector projects and where the black money is used to the manipulated and the lenders and offers the big and the kickbacks. Measures undertaken by the government to the curb black money and legislative frameworks and preventations of the Money Laundering Act of 2022 and Banami and Transaction Prohibition Act 1988 and prevent the preventions of the Corruption Act 1988 and the undisclosed and foreign incomes and asset impositions and of the Tax Bill 2015 Public and the Procurement Bill and Lokpal and the Lokayukt Act and tax reforms and the rationalizations of the income tax and with the greater tax base and the lowest taxes and tax reductions and it source in which the taxes is the reducted and from the payment itself and by the pie institutional measures and CB and DT and the enforcement directors, financial intelligence unit and central board of the exercise and the customs and central economic intelligence bureau and directors of the revenue intelligence and DRI and NIA and the CBI and police authority and the voluntary disclosed and schemes the government allow the reporting black money and the generated through tax evasions in other giving times frame as government has given in the black money and bill passed and years this years during 2006 and 2012 and the government has reported near the 26,000 crore black money demonstrations and in the 1978 and 2016 and government demonstrates high value note to the tackle black money encouraging cashless and transactions and recently government has taken on many initiative and like the UPI Rupee card and Jan Dhan account and to the promote the digital payment and government is also incentivizing and digital payments international cooperation doubt taxations and avoidance and agreement and the automatics the exchange of tax information foreign account and tax compliances act of the USA and multilateral conventions of the mutuals and administration assistance in tax matters and Financial Action Task Force and United Nations Convention Against the Corruption and United Nations Conventions and Against the Transactionals and the Organized and Crime. IGMOST group and the transfer pricings and agreement of G20 and way forward appropriated of the legislative framework related to the public and the procurement and the preventions of the bribery of the foreign officials and citizens and the grievances and the redressals and the wild labelers and protections and UID and Aadhaar is needed and setting up and the strengthening institution dealings with the illicit and monies and directed and of the criminal investigation cell for the exchange of information income tax and overseas units and ITOU aid the Mauritius and the Singapore has been the very useful in strengthening the foreign and the tax reserve and the investigation decision of the CB and DT and electoral reforms and appropriated reforms are the needed to the reduce money power in elections and since the election are one of the biggest and channels to the utilize the black money training personals and both the domestic and the international trainings to the personal for the effective and action and pertaining to the certain areas and can also help and for the instant the financial intelligence unit India and makes the make the proactive effort to the regulatory and the upgraded the skills of its the employees by the providing and them opportunity for trainings on the anti-money laundering and terrorism and financing and the related economic issues and the incentivizing bank transactions and to the curb the manage of black money and industries body federation of India and the chamber of the commerce of and industries and has the suggested incentivations of transactions and through the banking channel and other suitables and frameworks for taxations of agriculture income. Besides it the suggested reforms in the real estate and sectors and creations of IT infrastructures to track the tax and the innovations government budgeting, the effectiveness of the fiscal management and measures of the outline in the Fiscal Responsibilities and Budget Management Act and the FRB dependent on their the implementation adaptability and to the changing circumstances. Examine 251 difficult level through and references life meant and the insight on India why the questions in perceptions and have the grown in the eurozone and India and then the transparent from the richers and state are the funding and profit legacy and in the poorer ones and the measures needs to be the taken to the issues and growing the resentment and key demands of the questions to write about the performance of the FRBMA and changes and needed to it the directive what's examined. When asked to the examine, we must and investigated the topic contact and what's in the detail and inspected and it is the investigated and it and established the key fact and issues related to the topic in question and while the doing so we and should explain and why does the fact and issues and are the important and there the implication structure of the answer. Introduction given by the right about the aims and the objectives of the FRBMA body. First, write about the performance of the FRBMA and since it is the inception and especially and during the phase of the lows and economic growth and the volatility and in the global economic and mention the pros and the cons of the its performance. Also mention the various changes and made to the act and next the write about the changes and needed to the act and to the make it is the make effective in the implementation fiscal disciplines. Conclusion conclude and by right other way and forward introduction. Fiscal responsibilities and budget management FRBM Act was enacted in 2003 and it was introduced to the institutionalized and financial discipline and the reduce the India and fiscal deficiency and improve the microeconomic and management and the overall management of the public funds and by moving the towards a balanced and budget. The objective of the act and is to the ensures an intergenerational and equality and in the fiscals and management long runs microeconomic and stabilities and better the coordinations between the fiscal and the monetary policy and the transparency in the fiscal operation of the government body. Key feature of the FRBM Act and made in it's the mandatory and for the government and in the to the place and the followings the alongs and with the union budget and the documented in the parliament annually and medium terms and fiscal policies and statement and microeconomical framework statement and fiscal policy strategic statements. The FRBM Act the proposed and revenue and deficit and fiscal deficit and tax revenue and the total outstandings the liabilities and be projected as other percentage of the gross domestic product and GDP in the medium terms and fiscal policy statement and evaluations of the FRBM and Act performance of the FRBM Act the implementation of the FRBM and Act and the FRL has improved the fiscal performance of the both centers and the state and have the achieved the targeted and much the ahead and the prescribes and the timelines and government of India and was on the path of the achieving and this the objectives right in time and however due to the global financial crisis this was the suspended and the fiscal consolidations as the mandated in the FRBM's Act was put on the hold in the 2007 and 8. FRBM Act has been the violated and more than the adhered and to the since it is the enacted and the targeted fiscal deficit to the GDP and ratios of 3% for the union government and was the achieved and only the once and in 2007 and 8 and when it was the 2.5% and that the achievement has 8 into the emulated and against. The FRBM's Act was the amendment and twice in the 2012 and the 2015 the revisions in the 2015 shifted the date and for the achieving the 3% targeted to the 2017 and 18 by this years and the amendment revenue deficit targets was put and 8 the 2% of the GDP. Budget 2018 and 19 has proposed the amending the FRBM's Act the against and which will the shift the target of the 3% fiscal deficit and GDP ratio and to the end of March 2021 and no targeted and has been set for the revenue deficit and shortcomings of the act and reductions of the expenditures in the critical sectors and while there is other drastics and fail in the deficit it has largely and been on the account of the reduction in expenditures in the critical sector of the economic and such as the education, health, etc. The union government development expenditures and as other portions of the GDP has the decline over the time reduced and the development expenditure and the analysis of the revenue accounts of the development expenditure by the state and the show that in the almost and all the sectors of the development there has been other decline in the FRBM's era municipalizations and also at the times and it has been the seen that government has the achieving the deficits targeted by the municipalities the revenues and expenditure account and such as the tailings and the capital expenditures demanding and interim and dividends from the public sectors and undertakings the PSUs in advance etc. No force and measures and the clauses further the FRBM's Act the ignored the possible inverse and links between the fiscal deficit and fiscal expansions and the bank credit monetary expansions and that is if the credit growth and fails the fiscal deficit and may needs to rise and if the credit and rises and fiscal deficit ought to fail and to the ensure in the adequate money and supply to the economic investment is surveyed data on the money supplies and the growth and bank the credit and the GDP established and that the both money and supplies and growth and the credit expansions have the significantly and reduced in relations to the GDP growth and thus the FR FRBMN was and the amendment and twice in the 2012 and the 2015 the revision in the 2015 shifted the date and for the achieving the 3% targeted to the 2017 and 18 by this year the amendment revenue and deficit targeted was put at the 2% of the GDP and budgetary and 2018 and 19 has as proposed amendings the FRBMs and act the against and which will the shift and the targeted of the 3% of the fiscal deficit and GDP ratio to end March 2021 in the years and 2016 the NK6 committees and was set up and by the government to the revenue the FRB Act the task and was to the review and the performance of the FRBMs and Act the suggested the necessary changes and to the provisions of the Act. The recommendation of the committees and read that the government must target a fiscal deficit of the 3% of the GDP in the years up and to the March 31 and 2020 and cut it to the 2.8% and in the 2020 in 21 and the 2.5% and by the 2023 का लेटर कर ली मम्मी का सब चड्डी नहीं पहनी the government should start and by the defining other clear objective and based on the arbitrary and the targeted but on sound and first the principle as should Should aim to ensure depth and sustainability, and to this end and the government could and the adapt other strategy based on the four principles. Remove multiple fiscal criteria, and the target must not be fixed and focus on the one measures and for the guiding fiscal policies and have other long term plan. Remove multiple fiscal criteria, the current and the FRBMs, and sets the targeted for the overall deficit and the revenue and deficit and the debt. Such the multiple criteria and impeded the objectives of the insurance sustainability and since the target and the such and the conflict and with each the others, and this the criteria, this the criterias confusion about this one and to follow and thereby and the accountability and the accountability. Targeted must be the fixed and the around the world and the countries and are the realize and that the deficit targeted of the 3% of the GDP and debt the targeted of the 60% of the GDP and lack proper economic and grounding in India case and the take and they tax and know the accountant of the country and even the fiscal arm matrix or it's the strong politicals will be the repay is depth and any the specific targeted no matters and how well the grounded and encouraging government to the transfer spending of budget and such as with the oil bonds and in the mid 2000s and the subsidize and more the recently focus on one the measures and for the guiding fiscal policy in this the regard and Arvind Subramaniams and Josh female B propose and the targeting the primarily balances and the concept. Amendment in the FRBMs. The Farm Act was the amendment and twice in the 2012 and 2015 the revision in the 2015 and shifted the date for achieving the 3% targeted to the 17 and 18 by this the years and the amendment revenue and deficit targeted was put 82% of GDP and budget 2018 and 19 has opposed the amendings the FRBMs Act again, which will the shift the targeted of the 3% fiscal deficit and GDP ratio and to end the March and 2021 in the year 2016 the NK Singh's committee and was set up and by the government and to the revenue to FRBMs and Act and the task and was to the revenue and the performance of the FRBMs and Act and the suggested the necessary.
सब्जी बना रही हो क्या तुम?
Challenges and to the provision and to the act and the recommendation of the committees and read that the government and must targeted and the fiscal deficit of the 3% of the GDP in the year up and to the March 31 and 2020 cut it to the 2.8% in the 2020 and 21 and it to the 2.5% and by the 2023 changes needed in the firm in the FRBMs and in the post pandemic phase. Conclusion: economic disruptions and caused by the COVID and has the prompt and the called for the relocate the fiscal responsible and budget management act the FRBMs. The introduction of the FRBM in 2003 and inflected and the believe that framework and don't work. It is time and to the learn and from the past experience and adapt it. The economic and disruptions and the cues by the COVID-19 and has prompted the recommendation of the NK Singh committee. flexible, targeted with the escape and quizzes and creation of the fiscal council of the focus on the reductions and of the combination debt to the GDP and ratio of the center and the states to the 16% by the 2023 etc. May be incorporated the adopting other simple and fuse and the fiscal frameworks and based on the primary balances used the way forward inclusive growth and the issues arising from it. The level of the development across the Indian state and varies and significant and reflecting the diverse economic, social and the infrastructure condition and this the regional disparities has the profounded and the implications and for the overall national development and the underscored the need for targeted policies and the intervention to address the uniques and the challenges faced by the different states and discuss the 250 words. Difficulty level through and reference alignment and the inside on IS. In key areas like the education, health and infrastructures, all the students should aspire to catch up and with the best and key demands of the questions. To write about the historical, social, geographical, political and responsible for the economically disparities and between the various parts and region of India and its impact and the way to the outcomes and it is the directive words and discuss this is an all the encompassing directive and you must add the debates on paper by going through the details of the issues and concerned and by the examine each one of them and you must give the reason for both for and the against argument structure of the answer introductions begin by the giving context and body first write about the factors and that are the responsible for the economic disparities in the country and different level of the different development and next the right about the various limitations of the above and its the impact. Next write about the step and that are the needed to support the economically growth and the importance the equalities the qualities of the development and conclude by the right other way forward. Introduction. By writing a way forward introduction, the state across India and do not show other uniform growth and trend. The economic survey pointed out that the while the health trend and across the state and are the convergence and the income and the consumptions patterns show the sparm and divergence and the programs of the country and dependent on the program of each of its the individual state. Body cues responsible for the regional imbalances and natural resources in India and different regions and are the endowed and with the different and natural human based resources and some the state and such as the West Bengal and Jharkhand, Odisha, Chandigarh etc. and are the endowed and with the better minerals resources and while the others and such as the Punjab, Haryana and have better the irrigation facilities man-made historical reasons. Neglect of the some reasons and the preference of the others reasons and in terms of the investigation and infrastructure facilities historical factor and that go back to the Mughals and eras and become the prominent in the British era and have also the contributed to regional inequities government policy and faculty the planning policy process and inherited and from the colonials rule in the post-independent era and despite of the pro and backwards and areas policy and the programs and considerables and economic and social inequalities and exist among the different states. Interstate and disparities in growth of the GSDP and has the increased and post-economic reforms and period. Red tapeism and the corruptions and lack of the ease of doing of business and environmental, political and administrative inefficiency. जा बैठा लो उनका वो तो बैठा ली आजा चिल्ला रहा आवे ते आवे ढाक ली हो जा ढाके वो एक ढाक कितने जाए अब बात है Geography factors and like the climates and waterways and the terrain. Geography factor like the climate, waterways, just सही बात है. Waterways, terrain and soil are important and for the development and for the easy and coastal state and has been done and due to there the developed and post and waterway and for the trade in comparisons to the inlanded and regions. Social factor. The poor and the literate and the sectors of the least development region has high the fertility and rate and thus the growing the populations. Incapacities of the state into the harness and rich and the demographics and divided due to the less development job market and economic factor. High input and cost due to the inadequate and the infrastructures and lack of the demand and driven market and infrastructures like the robust and transport system in insufficiency in the poorest systems. Impact of the regional disparities in India's and the growing threat of left and extremist which has the repeatedly and acknowledged as the gravest security threat to Indian and state has its the root in economic deprivations and inequalities in the access to the resources. It has also been recognized and that the growing social inequalities and codes social cohesions and can the disabilities studied some recent research and has found that the likelihood of a country and remaining the mired in poverty or achieving sustainable growth and has other strong relations to the and averages life the expectancy of the citizenry and there it is the argues and that are the shorter average and lifespans and leaves the less times to the reap the return on the investment in the human capital. Inequality also breeds and economic insufficiency and limits the productivity and research by the IMF has shown and that the income inequalities and slows the growth and causes financial crisis and weakens and demand in a recent report and the Asian Development Bank has the similarly argued and that is emerging Asia's and income the disruption distributions and had not the worsened over the past 20 years. The reason repeat and growth the would have the lifted and the additional 140 million pupils and out of the extreme poverty. More and worryingly and rising the inequality is seen as other contributing causes for the rise of the authorizations leaders and often with other diseases and the agendas fluid and by the sanctuarism and the xenophobias and the nationalism and the readings. Inequality can lead to the conflict and both at the social at other national level resources and has the shown that in the contract to the oligarchies and regimes and the democracies avoid the serious politicals and the turbulences and only show longs and as they the ensures and that the relatives and levels of the inequalities and between the rich and the poor does and not becomes the excessively large. Large the other studies similarly indicated that the social conflict and are the indicated likely to break out and the situations where there are large inequalities and between the different groups and some the studies have the concludes and that the ethnics and groups and with the incomes and much the lower than other country and averages per capita income and era are more likely to the engage in the civil war and the union and the state government and should adopt other formula for the block wise devolutions and of the funds and targeted at more backward areas. Cooperative and the competitive and federation must be the promoted. Governance needs to be the particularly and the strengthened in more the backward areas and within other states and aspirational districts. Programs is other step in the right direction and the concept of the special categories state was introduced in 1969 and fifth financial commission for providing the special assistance to disadvantaged and state with other low resources and base difficult terrains and low population density inadequate and infrastructures and non-violations. Behavioral state finance. The planning commission also adopt and the areas specific approach in its the planning strategy and introduce the multiple centralized and suspended programs, the tribal development and programs, the hill areas and development program, the western ghat and development programs, and where the initiative carrying to geographical homogeneous and backward regions and the man-made and role of the Niti Aayog and should be the redefined and the enhances to involve the models I am aid the balances regional development implementation of GST and will reduce the disparities among the state and leading to more convergence and business friendly environment in terms of the singles withdraw window clearance and transparency in regulation tax benefits and providing the adequate and infrastructures. They give the content and of the fiscal space seeking the greater engagement of multilateral agency and both the traditional and non-the-traditional like the World Banks and the Asian Banks and the New Development Bank as well as the Asian infrastructures and bank would be the helpful in specials and infrastructures program and design for the more and backward state will be the multiplies and beneficiaries solving problem species and to the backward region and nationalism and patriarchies and the discriminations based on the sex and caste by increasing the literacy level and also the providing basic health and the amenities and to a certain extent the disparities could be the reduced and the female literacy is the best and the antidote to rising the total fertility rate and TFR and the females labors and participation and the efficient effective ways to the boost and per capita income and scientific and the technological development prudent and the interlinkings of the rivers and internet and the access through the innovatives and projects like projects loon and prospects and of the clouds and seeding in the droughts prone areas e-education e-health etc skill development and less than the 5% of the laborer how levelers in the Indias and has any the skills and certifications more the attentions to the skill development particulars in the less development state. Thank you guys. Bye bye.